Everybody, Dave here, Hidden Freedom Investing. In today's video, we're going to go over Intel's Q4 earnings for 2020. The stock has been on a run lately, and they had earnings today. And in addition to that, they got a new CEO. And the last thing we're going to talk about is what happened to the 1,000 shares that I bought about 5 months ago. So let's go ahead and get started. The information expressed in this video is my opinion and my opinion only. This information is for entertainment purposes only. Please do your own research. All right, we're looking at the executive summary here. This is directly off their website. Exceeded October guidance on revenue by $2.6 billion and EPS by 42 cents. Record full year revenue for CCG, DCG, NSG, and Mobileye. Improving our execution, meeting strong customer demand. Q4 PC unit growth up 33% year over year, ramping SuperFin technology in 3HVM fabs. 10 nanometer supply unit growth up 4x year over year. Strong progress on 7 nanometer. And we will talk about 7 nanometer here a little bit later in this video. I listened to the earnings call and listened to all the questions as well. So we'll kind of just mention that as well, because that's kind of a big thing there. Ice Lake server now shipping, Alder Lake and Sapphire Rapid sampling to customers. Highest ever free cash flow of $21.1 billion, raising dividend by 5%. This is their priorities, improving our execution to strengthen our core. 3rd gen Intel Xeon scalable processors, Ice Lake shipping. 11th gen Intel Core desktop processors, Rocket Lake shipping. Sapphire Rapid sampling broadly to customers. Alder Lake, Intel's first 10 nanometer CPU for desktop, sampling to customers now. Habana Gaudi design win with AWS. And what is that? Goja 2 sampling with CSP, shipping Intel Iris X Max graphics card, Intel GPU. I have looked at a laptop recently, and that is in there. So, and also the 11th gen CPU is in the laptop as well. So that's kind of good. Let's see here, exceeding our reach to accelerate growth, $6 billion revenue in networking. So they did talk quite a bit about the networking, the 5G stuff specifically, saying it's gonna be better than wired technology. So that's kind of interesting. They're gonna be making quite a bit of cash from the 5G stuff. So that's kind of exciting. And they, they got rid of the McAfee and the NAND and all that. So they took that and tried to put some of the cash back into the higher producing segments. We'll talk about that here in a second as well. Delivered gold release of Open API Development Toolkit. Mobileye announced new LiDAR SoC software defined radar and AV test vehicles in 4 new countries. 13,000 deployments of Intel IoT market ready solutions. Debuted cryogenic quantum computing control chip Horse Ridge 2. Thoughtfully deploying your capital. 2020 cash from operations $35.4 billion and free cash flow of $21.1 billion, up 25% year over year. Returned $19.8 billion to shareholders in 2020. Now that was buybacks and dividends combined. Raising dividend by 5% to $1.39 a share. Okay, and that was a 7-cent increase. Doubled 14 and 10 nanometer manufacturing capacity since 2017. Looking at the financial highlights here, Q4 revenue $20 billion, down 1% year over year, $2.6 billion above expectations. So the guidance they gave last year, they actually beat those guidance by $2.6 billion. Obviously the pandemic was something they didn't expect, but things kind of strengthened up later in the year, even though the government held back in some of its spending as well. Q4 operations margin 31.5%, down 4 points year over year. Q4 operating margin 31.5%, down 4 percentage points year over year, and 5 percentage points above expectations. Q4 EPS of $1.52, I should say, flat year over year, 0.42 above expectations. Platform execution, strong notebook demand, partially offset by a decline in server and desktop. So that really had to do with people working from home and education at home and all that stuff. Servers kind of declined, the data center kind of declined just because of the government spending, in addition to, a lot of businesses probably not needing servers as well. Let's see here, desktop to notebook, increased entry education volume, which we just talked about, DCG, competitive pricing environment, customer mix, and SoC volume growth, 10 nanometer acceleration, partially offset by Tiger Lake sell-through and lower 10 nanometer startup cost. Adjacencies, improved NAND unit cost, partially offset by lower NAND ASP. Spending, increased investment in 7 nanometer, which we'll kind of touch on a little bit later. Capital allocation, higher ICAP, portfolio gains, and share buyback, partially offset by higher tax. And we'll just kind of compare some of the numbers, 3 months ended here from last year. So this year, $5.8 billion compared to last year's $6.7 billion. And operating income, 6.2, almost 6.3 billion compared to last year's 7.2 billion. Operating margin 31.5 compared to last year's 35.7. And then the earnings per share, which we just talked about, was $1.52 and compared to last year's $1.52, which was pretty flat on the year. So we'll look at Q1 2021 outlook here, and revenue, they're expecting about $17.5 billion, down at 12% year over year. PC-centrics up low single digits, data-centric down 25% year over year. They are excluding that NAND because they're getting out of that or got out of it. Revenue down 6% year over year, data-centric down 15%. So they did say on the conference call that they expect the actual PCs and notebook sales to actually be up the first half of the year, and then probably kind of dropping off, and then probably seeing the servers and all that stuff actually increase later in the year instead of being the first part of the year. And that could be just because of COVID is getting taken care of, and maybe by 6 months from now, maybe people will be going back to school, and maybe people will start spending on cloud and servers and all that. But so that's just what they're projecting right now. Operating margin 30%, down 4 percentage points year over year. Gross margin 58%, down 4 percentage points year over year, excluding NAND they excluded the NAND, they sold that section. EPS $1.10, that's down 24% year over year. Tax rate, who cares about that? It's 14.5%. The new CEO is a huge win for Intel. Go ahead and like and subscribe and hit that bell notification. So I'm not going to go over the individual business segments in this video. It just makes the video too long. If you want to look up that information, I'll put the link to this presentation down in the description if you want to look that information up. But I can tell you they had strong growth in 5G, and they had a lot of growth, big growth in Mobileye as well. And I know that NIO Neo over in China uses Mobileye. I'm not sure what other ones, what other EV makers use Mobileye, but in addition to that, we're going to touch on 7 nanometer here just in a second. But I did want to mention they just announced that they got a new CEO, Pat Gelsinger. All right, now I know who he is. I'm familiar with who he is. I worked for 3 companies that he's worked for, in addition to working for one of the companies he worked for at the same time as well. Actually, 2 of them. 2 of the companies he's worked for, I worked at the same time or the same company. So Bob Swan will be out on February 15th. Pat Gelsinger will be back in there. Now, granted, he started with the company in 1979, all right, as a quality assurance technician, I believe. And I think he was the architect on the 486 as well. So he was the CTO, and then in 2009 he went to EMC and worked there for a few years. And then I think when EMC and VMware were partners, he went over and took over VMware, and I think he worked there for 10 years. And he has really been looking for the CEO position for Intel for quite a while. And now he took his opportunity. I don't know, what happened. The board just made a decision or whatever, but here he is, going to be CEO on February 15th, and I'm excited because this guy, he knows what he's doing. I mean, he's not to say that Bob doesn't know what he's doing. He inherited kind of a shit show, if you want to call it that, but Pat, I'm just digging what he's going to be doing with Intel. I think Intel's issues are going to be solved. And so now that I've talked about a little bit about the CEO what did they mention about the 7 nanometer on the actual conference call? So on the conference call, they did say, well, they haven't made a 100% decision yet, which like they said they were going to, but I don't think the whole CEO thing was in the plans or in the works. But they said they're going to use a hybrid approach. But you know, Pat was on the conference call, so he, you know, even though he's not CEO yet, he was on the conference call. At this point, he did comment and say they are going to use, you know, some third-party foundries in, you know, for part of their manufacturing, but they're still going to manufacture like, you know, 90% or something like that of their own stuff. Don't quote me on the 90% because I think they might still make some changes, but they don't want to get rid of their manufacturing. They put a lot of money into that. They got the fabs and all that. You know, they got their own fab centers, right? So they're not going to get rid of that. Plus their profit margins would go down if they just use a third party. But they still want to leverage those third party foundries and, you know, have that opportunity there if they need it as well. So the 7 nanometer they did mention will be coming out in 2023, and I think they mentioned that the 7 nanometer got pushed up. Actually, instead of being pushed back, it got pushed up, I think about a couple of quarters possibly. So that's good news. And I think that Pat Gelsinger will let us know a little bit more information before the next quarter. So in April, they'll probably let us know a little bit more about what they're going to do, maybe even possibly before April, you know, exactly what they're going to do about the 7 nanometer. But he's committed to solving the issue. I mean, granted, the issue that they had has been solved for about 6 months now. But I think that he's going to just fine tune the process and make the 7 nanometer better. In addition to that, they are going to provide full year guidance before April as well, because right now that is provided guidance through 2021 or Q1 of 2021. So what were some of the questions on the conference call? Now, a lot of the questions were around 7 nanometer, you know, about using third-party foundry and all that. So I do know that they did talk about the 3 nanometer on the conference call, and they did touch on that just a little bit. You know, I mean, just because, you know, the manufacturer's doing 3 nanometer doesn't mean that it's, you know, better than the 7 nanometer or anything like that. At the same time, they did mention that, you know, they want to catch up and they want to leapfrog at some point, hopefully, and they want to be leading in the technology again. So I think that Pat was the right message and the right person for this job, and I'm kind of excited to see where the stock goes at this point. Granted, you know, it could be a little rocky here for the next couple of months until he gets his, you know, feet in the door and, you know, gets a handle of what's going on. But I'm really excited to have Pat in there. I think things are going to turn around. I think it was a great thing to do by the board. So on the conference call, they did not talk about Microsoft taking over, you know, making their own chips, their ARM chips, or anything like that. They didn't mention anything about Apple doing their M1 chip either, which is kind of odd. I thought there would be at least one question or at least one mention to that, but zero mention to that at all on the conference call. So you're probably wondering, okay, so what happened to my 1,000 shares that I owned and I bought back in August? I did a video on it. If you take a look at that video, you look it up here. Bought 1,000 shares, and that was back in August of 2020. Bought a, you know, it was an average about $48.90 or so, and you know, the stock came up to 54 or 55 or something like that, and I didn't sell, and then they had earnings, and then it tanked, you know, and then it went down $4,000. I did a video on that too. If you want to take a look at that video, you look at it here. So it was $11,000 swing. I talked about that. And then I just recently sold Intel on January 7th. Okay, now that was at a $52.18 or so. And that was a gain of about $3,289, okay? And you're probably thinking, Dave, the stock is at 60 now or whatever. Yes, you know, I gotta sell the stock for it to go up, right? I mean, that's just the way it is for me. She go. Okay, so when I did sell Intel, I turned around and immediately bought 2 long leaps on it, okay? So I bought a January 20, 2023 5250 strike, and I bought 2 of those, okay, and that controls 200 shares. I paid $1,851. And then just recently, when the news came out about the CEO, the stock went up. And then I turned around and sold those long leaps there for a total gain of $569 total. Okay, so that actually, everything here with the common sold and the long leaps, that was $3,858 total gain. but you also have to take into account that I also collected one dividend, and that was $330, okay? And in addition to that, I also was selling covered calls against the position for the 5 months that I owned it, and collected another $517 from that alone. And that was a total gain that I've owned Intel for $4,705 total. All right, so I'm completely out of Intel in that particular account. So you're probably thinking, Dave, you know, why didn't you just hold it? And you know, well, you know, that's just the way my luck is. I got, you know, shafted twice by earnings, and I didn't want to get shafted again. Didn't know, I knew they were going to have some sort of, you know, news. I just didn't know if it was going to be good news or bad news. I knew news was coming out in January. I just didn't know if it was going to be good news or bad news. So the way I look at it is, I got to sell the stock to go up for everybody else, all right? So literally just, you know, it was like 4 days or something after I sold it, the stock CEO news came out and the stock just skyrocketed, and I'm just looking at myself thinking, you know, come on, give me a break, man. I cleared over $4,700 in Intel. She gone. Go ahead and like and subscribe and hit that bell notification. So I do own Intel in my dividend portfolio. If you want to take a look at my dividend portfolio, I've done many videos on that. Take a look at this one up here. It's my most recent one I did. And I do own Intel in here. So let's scroll up here. Here's the position right here. So I did sell some shares out of this portfolio recently. So I'm down to 84 shares at this point. And the reason why I really did that was because if you look at the top 10 holdings in Vanguard VYM here, this ETF, you know, Intel's a pretty big position in there, so I didn't want to have a big position in my portfolio here individually, so I did sell out of some of those shares as well. So I'm down to 84 shares total, you know, for about $5,200 position. So we'll see what happens. If the stock does drop down a little bit, maybe I'll pick up some more shares as well. And I know IBM just had earnings today as well, and they tanked after hours, so that should be cut in half probably. But anyways, that's where I'm at. I sold out of my common shares in my TD Ameritrade account for $4,700 gain, you know, including the dividends, including the long leaps, including the covered calls as well. But I still own Intel in VYM, and in addition, I own an individual position in Intel here as well. So at this point, I'm super excited to see Pat take over. I mean, I think that was just a great move. He's been waiting for it for quite a while. He's got 30 years of experience at just Intel alone, okay? You know, from 18 years old, you know, from 1979 to 2009, worked at a couple other large IT companies, you know, VMware for 10 years and EMC for a few years as well. So I'm super excited to see him take that role on. He's been waiting for it for quite a while, so I think he's going to do great things. So I'm looking forward to maybe even getting back into Intel, maybe some long leaps. Maybe I'll get back into long leaps. So let's go ahead and end this video here. If you have any comments, questions, or concerns, go ahead and leave a comment below. Go ahead and hit me up on Twitter or Facegram. You know, you can email me if you like as well. Until next time, go ahead and like and subscribe, and we'll see you next video. Thanks for watching.